Good morning, everyone. We are Group 10 and we are going to discuss the Republic Act number 8371, or also known as the Indigenous Peoples' Rights Act of 1997. So what is Republic Act number 8371? It says here that it is an act to organize, protect, and promote the rights of indigenous cultural communities and indigenous peoples, creating a national commission on indigenous peoples, establishing, implementing mechanisms, appropriating funds, therefore, and other purposes. Ating nga batas ket mangprotekta dagiti IPs inti kultura da tradisyon ken practices nang nangruna dito nga batas ket isot ti nang recognize nga dagiti IPs ket may samot nga importante nga grupo nga dapat may kanti protection ken ma-prioritize ti gobyerno. IPs dito'y Pilipinas ket karaman dagiti marginalized people. And having this law would ethically and lawfully nga matulungan da nga ma-promote ken maikan ti rights dito'y society tayo. Ating nga batas ket nang recognize ulit nga dapat nga gito'y IPs ket papadamo lang nga tattao ken kailangan dati fair treatment. In short, dito'y nga batas ket na-establish to promote justice, equality, human rights kadagiti amin nga IPs dito'y Pilipinas. Under this act, there are general provisions. The first one is the Section 1 indicates the title that this act shall be known as the Indigenous Peoples' Rights Act of 1997. Section 2, the Declaration of State Policies. The state shall recognize and promote all the rights of indigenous peoples, ICCs or IPs, hereunder enumerated within the framework of the Constitution.
Letter A. The state shall recognize and promote the rights of ICCs or IPs within the framework of national unity and development. Pinapahiwatig ng deklarasyon na ito na kinikilala at tinataguyod ng pamahalaan ang mga karapatan ng mga katutubo at indigenous cultural communities. Habang tinitiyak na ang mga karapatang ito ay umaakma sa mga layunin at pag-unlad at pagkakaisa ng bansa. Sinasabi nito na bilang bahagi ng pangkahalatang pag-unlad ng bansa, ang mga karapatan ng mga katutubo tulad ng pagmamay-ari ng lupa, kaugaliang pangkultura at sariling pamamahala. Sa pamamagitan ng pagsama-sama ng mga karapatan ng katutubo, ito ay naglalayong itaguyod ang mga pagkakaisa at pagkakaisa sa proseso ng pag-unlad habang pinararangalan ang mga kanilang natatanging pagkakakilanlan at mga contribution.
The rights of ICCs and IPs to their ancestral domains to ensure their economic, social, and cultural well-being, and shall recognize the applicability of customary laws governing property rights or relation in determining the ownership and extent of ancestral domain.
Letter C. The state shall recognize, respect, and protect the rights of ICCS and IPS to preserve and develop their cultures, traditions, and institutions. It shall consider these rights in the formulation of national laws and policies. The Indigenous People Rights Act of 1997, or Republic Act number 8371, a historic piece of Philippine law that acknowledges and defends the right of indigenous cultural communities or indigenous peoples, has a key principle that is highlighted in this excerpt. Respecting ICCS and IPS rights, the Declaration highlights the state's dedication to recognizing, upholding, and defending ICCS and IPS rights to preserve and develop their distinctive cultural heritage. Cultural preservation and development, the state respects the intrinsic worth of the customs, institutions, and cultures of ICCS or IPS and recognize the right to preserve and foster these facets of their identity. When creating and implementing the national laws and policies, the state must take these rights into account to make sure they don't violate anyone's right.
Letter D. The state shall guarantee that members of the ICCs or IPs regardless of sex shall equally enjoy the full measure of human rights and freedoms without distinctions or discriminations. At sinasabi nito na lahat ng miyembro o kabilang ng ICCs or IPs ay meron karapatang maging malaya base sa kanilang kasarian. At ang halimbawa nito ay kung meron tayong kakilalang mga IPs na bakla o kaya tumboy o ano pa ang kasarian niya, dapat hindi natin ito binubuli o dinidiscriminate dahil meron siyang karapatan maging malaya without distinctions or any discriminations.
E. The state shall take measures with the participation of the ICCs and IPs concerned to protect their rights and guarantee respect for their cultural integrity and to ensure the members of ICCs and IPs benefit on equal footing and regulation granted to other members of the population.
Letter F. The state recognizes its obligations to respond to the strong expression of the ICC's IPs for cultural integrity by assuring maximum ICC IP participation in the direction of education, health as well as other services of ICC's IPs, in order to render such services more responsive to the needs and desires of the communities. Ang gobyerno ay committed na suportahan at protektahan ang kultura ng mga indigenous cultural communities, indigenous people, ICCs, IPs. Gusto nilang siguraduhin na ang mga ICCs, IPs ay aktibong kasali sa pagplano at pagpapatupad ng mga serbisyo tulad ng edukasyon at kalusugan. Sa ganitong paraan, mas magiging angkop at epektibo ang serbisyong ito sa pangangailangan at kagustuhan ng mga komunidad na ito. Parang sinasabi nila na kayo ang mag-decide kung ano ang kailangan nyo para mas maayos ang serbisyo namin sa inyo. Sa Ilocano, kahit mingada kayo iti panagplano tapno mas maurnos kina siya dagiti serbisyo para kada kayo.
And we are now going to proceed to the rights of ICCs and IPs. The first one is the rights of ancestral domain and lands, such as the right of ownership, right to develop lands and natural resources, right to stay in territory, right in case of displacement, and so on. The next one is the right of self-governance and empowerment, containing the self-governance and self-defense, justice system, conflict resolution, institution, and peace-building processes, participation in decision-making, and etc. The next one is the social justice and human rights. We have equal protection and non-discrimination of ICCs and IPs, right during armed conflict, right to equal opportunities and treatment. Basaon yun turutan, idaduman. And lastly, the cultural integrity, which contain protection on indigenous culture, traditions and institutions, educational system, recognition of cultural diversity, community intellectual rights, right to cultural sites and ceremonies, right to IKSP, and so on.